All right. Okay, give me 1 second.
Sure.
Hello, everyone. I'm just got here late. Sorry.
Just trying to get my screen up. My apologies. There, are you able to see that? Hold on, let me make it presentation view. All right, you should be good to go. And just cue me when you need a slide change.
Okay. Well, I certainly would like to welcome everybody who's attending this this workshop. I was looking forward to it, and I must apologize for my COVID look. And I think everybody has that these days. One of the things about relapse prevention is I think it's something that we all think about. It's something that we have to deal with, and it's an interesting topic, and because it has so many people having various ideas about preventing relapse and how do you move forward from relapses. So my view is unique in the sense that it is my perspective. It's a perspective that I've garnered over 25 years of working with people who have chosen not to relapse, or if they do relapse, they then recognize what's happened for them, and then they move on and make more positive choices in that. So if we could just move on to the next slide. Okay. Okay, there are many definitions to relapse, and I just want to go over some of them because, again, this is where we see the variety of things that people see in relapse or what they think relapse is. So the return of signs and symptoms of a disease after recovery, and that's has to do much with the medical model. It's a deterioration in the state of health, mental or physical, after recovery, and simply a return to substance use. But for some, it's part of the recovery process. I don't view it as a failure. I view it as an opportunity to learn and do things differently. But for many people that I've dealt with, it is really a returning to old habits, attitudes, and behaviors, and that comes out of their process with their addiction. It can also be starting again and moving forward. And for some, they would define it as having a mental blip, you know, a slip, so, or falling off the wagon, whatever, however people want to put that. Okay, if you could have the next slide. As many of you know, there are a lot of common triggers for a relapse: family issues, unresolved issues, stress, loneliness, anger. And it could be any combination of these. It doesn't have to be one or the other. But one of the things that is really, really common that I see as a commonality in all this is that it has to do with the individual and how they relate to the world and those around them. If we could have the next slide. So one of the things as I've talked to people, not only entering treatment programs, but also just being clients of myself, is that I've discovered that we all have biases that define our world. We have a certain way of looking at the world. Now, that comes from our background, our experience, our life experience, those around us. But they are states of mind we adopt to help us define our world. And from the moment of first contact, the adoptive worldview comes into play. So the minute somebody calls, you already get a good idea of what state of mind they're in and how they're viewing things. It could be the language they use, how they talk about themselves, how they feel about others. And that's often you discover that in the very, very first contact with them. So how do we form our worldview? Now, these are questions I am putting out there for you to ask yourself, because I think they're really, really important questions. Because I think they help inform us on how we work with our clients. And I think we need to take some time to figure out for ourselves, what is our quality worldview? What makes things good? What makes life worthwhile and worth looking at? And one of the things that I've discovered is many people never take any time to think about how they view the world and what would define a quality worldview. So one of the things that is important when I'm dealing with clients is, what do people need to do to change their worldview? And how they view the world from biases and attitudes. And what choices do they make in forming how they see others, how they see themselves, and how they see the world around them? So I think these are good questions to contemplate anytime you're dealing with somebody and for yourself, because sometimes we come with biases that we want to impose transference on our clients to make, to help them be successful. But I think we need to be really aware of what our quality world is, may not be somebody else's quality world. Okay, if we can move on to the next. So I have been very heavily influenced by Dr. William Glasser. He was the originator of choice theory and reality therapy, in which he proposes that we make choices based on our quality worlds, or what we perceive to be a quality world, or the world that that doesn't have a lot of quality in it. And it all has to do with our relationship to others, and how do we do that? How do we relate to others? So what he would say is, we have pictures or images of the world we would like in our head. And what happens is, very often there's a difference between what we would like to see and what we have, or what's going on for us at the moment. We also have a picture of the people we want to be with. Who do we want to associate with? How do we want to be together with others? Possessions, money, all come into play also. How do we want to accumulate those, or do we? Those all play an important part. What are the experiences we would like to have? This could be anything from enjoying nature to skydiving. What is it that we want? What kind of experiences do we want in our world? What are our ideas and beliefs that we value? What's important to us? And how do we how do we play out our values? We may say that we value quality time with our family, and then for somebody who's addicted to a substance, that's something they may value, but then they go and choose to use instead of spending time with their family. We also have pictures and images that drive forth our like efforts to satisfy needs. And what I mean is that how do we get our needs met? And how do we do that? And we often have a picture on how to do that. And Glasser would say that our meeting needs is linked to our successes. And in other words, the more needs we can get met, the more likely we are to be successful. And if we have unattainable pictures, and here I want to also say that unattainable pictures sometimes are a result of our social status. It can be not having enough supports, maybe not having community. It can be all kinds of things that show us that maybe our pictures aren't attainable. And that often leads to frustration and disappointment. And how we cope with that disappointment is often which leads to using a substance. So Glasser would also say that if we have awareness, if we know about ourselves, if we understand ourselves and we have a realistic picture of the world around us, even if it's not favorable, then we can make the choices and change and have better lives, in essence. So there are 5 basic needs that Glasser would say that we have, and we get frustrated in these when we don't have them. One is belonging, and that is our need for community, to love others, to be with others, to communicate with others. So that is a really, really important element in having our needs met and how successful we are. There's also power and achievement. In other words, can we achieve our goals? Can we get the kind of jobs and work that we like and want to have a career in? Do we feel that we are empowered, that we can do the things that we want to, or are we doing things just because other people say we need to be doing them? Fun and enjoyment are things that are important, that we have those in our lives to be fulfilled. Freedom and independence. In other words, freedom to assert ourselves into our world in a way that is helpful. But he would also say one of the things that comes with freedom is responsibility, and the responsibility is not to hurt others. And probably the most basic need is the survival need. If we don't have enough food, clothing, or shelter, then it's going to be very, very difficult to have any of these other elements in our world. So one of the things I always look at with clients is, are their survival needs being met? If you can't pay your rent, it gets really, really difficult. And so what are the supports? What are the things that we can do as clinicians to be able to help people get those basic needs met? And that may be community resources, regional resources, food banks, whatever it is that we can help them move forward. I just wanted to very quickly tie in Maslow's hierarchy of needs because they fit in so well with Glasser, and I'm not sure that there's a crossover. Well, I am sure there is a crossover here of our needs, but if we don't get some of these basic needs met, then it makes it really hard to go up the scale or up the pyramid. Okay, if we could have the next slide. So the premise of William Glasser's choice theory is that people are responsible for themselves. They're responsible for their behavior, how they act, and their attitudes. However, he does add that you must have awareness. And for a lot of people who are addicted, they may not even have any awareness of what a quality world looks like, feels like, or is like. So, our awareness, and this is why I think it's really important to educate people in the process of in their recovery about what they could have and what are the possibilities that they can have. But again, it comes down to them being aware of their own attitudes currently and how they can change their attitudes to move forward. And again, Glasser would say, you need to meet these needs without harming others. And so somebody who's addicted, say, to alcohol and their family is, providing for them, and yet they're using their financial means to buy alcohol, then they are really harming their family. And that's a choice that they've made at that point. And so if you take all of these together, he said, we can have very happy and fulfilling lives. So my premises are that addictive behavior is the result of a cognitive dissonance between the current worldview we hold and the quality worldview we desire. And cognitive dissonance is that feeling where you get that things are not just fitting correctly. They're not going the way that they need to, so that I feel like I fit or that things are the way they should be. My premise also is addictive behaviors are maladaptive choices people make to cope with their difficulties within their worldview. I was recently working with a young man who was addicted to cocaine, and he used cocaine as a way to cope with stress in life. And once we discovered what it was that he wanted in his life, like he wanted his spouse to be more loving, to be more receptive to him, then we looked at, okay, what is it that you're doing with the use of cocaine that is really turning her off you? And what other choices could you make? So we explored strategies that he could use to use on his stress to move forward and have a more or a better relationship. So I also believe that people have direct control over their acting and thinking, and hence their choices in having a quality worldview. So we can help people move forward in their acting and their thinking, and help them process that. So meeting a basic needs is an integral part of the recovery process and relapse prevention and creating a quality world. And I think right from the minute that people enter, whether it's a program or they enter your office for addiction, it's important to let them make choices about their own recovery, about what's happening and how it's happening, to work on treatment plans together, to empower them to realize that they have had choices all along. Okay, could I have the next slide? So what is our role as an addictions counselor? And I think this is where we can make a substantial difference by helping clients discover their quality world through choices. What is it that they are looking for? And looking at the choices that they've made that don't get them there, and help them make choices that help them move towards that quality world. In my experience, all clients do not relapse all the time. And there are times in their lives when the stress is less, when they have things that are not so impactful on them, and they've made some choices about that. So I always look for the exception question. In other words, what was there ever a period in your time, in your life, when this was not a problem or it was less severe? And how did you handle it at that point? What did you do? What kind of choices did you make? And so that is a really, really important thing to show clients that they do have the ability to make really, really good choices about their life, and to be choices that lead them to more success. Now, some of you are probably familiar with Stephen DeShazer. He's responsible for sort of developing the miracle question, and his premise was, if life was different the next morning, tomorrow morning, if life was different, what would you be doing differently? What would you be seeing? How would you be interacting with people? And I kind of put my own slant on this and say, what choices would you be making that you do not relapse again? So it's I think a really, really useful question for clients in order to be able to move them forward and see that they can make those choices. So, and the last one is assisting and helping clients choose supports that help prevent relapse. And sometimes they need assistance in accessing services or other resources, or just things in their life that are falling apart. It can be as simple as, you know, their license has lapsed, their driver's license has lapsed. How would they go about doing that? Sometimes things get so overwhelming for clients that they feel that they have no choice. But helping them move through that, it shows them that you're not the one who's going to do it for them, but you are going to walk alongside them as they access those services. So I know I haven't taken as much time in the presentation as with all these slides, but I would really like to open it up to a Q&A so that we can have a really good discussion about choices in your experience, maybe allowing people to have choices. So Abby, are there any questions that have come? Hi.
We don't have any questions that have come up yet, but if you guys would like to chat with the speaker, if you could please raise your hand or comment in the chat box, now would be a great time. And I can bring them over to the presenter.
Can I talk? This is Hossein.
Hi, Hossein.
Yep, go for it.
Yeah, I believe choice is a basic human right.
Okay.
So it has to be given. I don't have no control, authority, or wish to prevent anybody from making his or her own choice. However, for my clients, for example, I would like to be at their side that in case, based on my own understanding or perception, the type of choice they are making may not sound reasonable or logical, I would only give them my advice, but I would allow them to make the final decision themselves. So determination is on their own. I think when I do that, I help the clients to enhance their responsibility and their accountability and how they form their perception about life.
So you're absolutely right. I think the choice is still the client's choice to do that, whatever choice they do. But I think it's also our responsibility to point out the consequences of those choices if they move forward with that.
That's why I would stand by their side and just coach them through, mentor them through, you know. Yeah, I agree, sir. I agree.
I'm going to put this on.
All right, can we move to, oh, sorry, Abdul, were you talking?
Yeah, I kind of have a quick question, Michael. I think, Michael, first of all, congratulations that, you know, you've been able to kind of apply solution-focused approaches to addiction. I think I love that this idea is novel, and not only that, but I think it does have a place. My personal a struggle with this is that this approach does not address structural issues, you know, homophobia, racism, sexism. You know, these are the kind of things that are beyond the individual's control, but these issues directly impact our clients. You know, the issue of racism, for example, you know, Black Lives Matter, you know, the microaggression that most of our Black and indigenous communities go through every day of their lives. You know, those are the kind of things that we cannot boil down to choices. And I'm not sure what are your thoughts about, well, what's our responsibility and how does this approach address these systemic structural issues? Thank you.
Abdul, you're absolutely correct. Those are very, very, what I call heavy issues that also need to be addressed, and sometimes they are very difficult from a choice point of view because it's happening to that individual. But we can help them also look at how could they react, or how could they do things differently that at least keep them safe, or from, you know, situations that may not be helpful to them.
Yeah, but and kind of a follow-up question also is that, you know, what's our responsibility as a counselor in trying to address these systemic issues, right? I think we have a responsibility to the welfare and well-being of our clients. And if we know as counselors that these are impacting their well-being, what's our responsibility as a counselor? Like, how do we go about trying to not only support our clients, but support, you know, in terms of, you know, dealing with these issues that are systemic?
I agree with you. I think we do have some responsibility, and I think we can take our part by, you know, engaging government, by writing to our MPs or MPPs about these issues, or even our local city councilors, and asking them to support people who are, you know, facing systemic racism or other issues. And I think it's important that we speak up on these matters and not just sit back, but let people know that this is a concern to us.
Thank you.
All right, so we got Wanda up next. Wanda, I see you have your hand raised. Would you be willing to take the floor and ask your question?
Sure. I'm not so much sure if it's a question, but when it comes to choice, in one of the programs I work with the resistant population. So they're coming through the court system and they come to me going, well, I have to do this. I have to take this program. And I go to that, you know, and I tell them, but you have a choice. And they're going, no, I don't. I have to be here. And my philosophy, part of that journey for them is like, well, he says, but if I don't, I go to jail. I said, but it's still a choice. And I finally get frustrated with that. But then when I lead them through why they're coming, they see it in a different way, because again, I think it's partly for me, and it's not transference, but in my, let's say, personal and professional life, especially personal life, if I have a choice, then it's not so bad. But when they think that choice, because they have to come and see me, or they think they have to come and see me because of why, you know, through the court system or whatever, I said, but you do have a choice. And once we go through those barriers and through that process, they see it a little bit differently. So that's my kind of think, maybe shared experience, in that if I believe that I have a choice, it's not so bad.
Right.
I mean, the outcome, the other choice, the other, whatever I choose may not be good because it's this or jail, but this may not be so bad.
Yeah, and I've worked with clients who, you know, have come to me because they want a letter for the court. and one of the things I do, I say, I don't do that. I will not do that. However, I will help you discover or explore what kind of world and quality world you would like. And if jail's part of that, well, so be it. You know, that again is your choice. But once they sort of realize, oh, I can have a quality world, it puts a slightly different slant on it. Oh, I can, you know, live a fulfilling life. And I find that exciting. I really like working with that population when they kind of could discover for themselves things can really be different. And that excites me.
That's right. Because they have a choice, but they don't see it at the time. Because I went to court and the judge or the crown says, you have to take this program, you know, to stay out of jail or whatever that is. And like once I explore that with them, it's like seeing it that way, then, you know, wow, this wasn't so bad. If we allow that, again, like you said, that openness, but I think it starts with the choice, definitely, to know that I have a choice or they have a choice.
Yeah, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
This is Hossein. Can I get involved? Even though we have a choice, our clients, how to make that choice is a choice by itself. Can we look at that?
Sure. Can you elaborate a little further on that, Hussein?
Yeah. Okay. I have a choice to take this condition not to go to jail.
Right.
But I said, no, this is not a choice, because if I don't make that decision, I'm going to go to jail. So here, if we can use the word how as a philosophy in life, that how to make that choice is a choice by itself based on my own self-awareness, my own understanding, my own perception, my own thought process, and the advice I get from my counselor or social worker is a choice by itself. So I agree with the previous speaker when she said that is a choice. But again, sometimes our clients, because of their cognitive ability or inability, they don't know how to make that choice. I don't know if I make sense or not. I'm trying to get away from being a philosopher because I'm not a philosopher. But sometimes my clients, they know it's their choice, but they try to manipulate their own with their own minds. And they said, no, it's not our choice. If I don't do that, I'll go to jail. I said, yes, but if you accept it, it's a choice. You are making a decision. So what do you think about that?
Well, I agree. And sometimes clients view that, you know, I don't have a choice. And in some sense, that is real, because if they don't do certain things, they will go to jail, right? But on the other hand, I encourage people to look at their choices they're making, even if they are reluctant to go to see a counselor, to then say, okay, you're making a choice for right now to stay out of jail, but what other choices can you make so that in the future, this won't happen to you again?
I agree. Okay, thank you. Thanks for clarification.
All right, so next up, we're gonna hear from Michael. Michael, what was your question?
Well, it's kind of a comment that goes along with that. Yes, we have choice, but for it to be successful, it has to be a supported choice.
Yes.
And because we make all kinds of choices. If we have no support to back up that choice, it's not really going to go anywhere. One of the things that I do with clients to let them understand the concept of choice is quite often they'll say, well, I can't do this and I can't do that. And I don't allow that. I say, change that to won't, because can't takes all the power out of me. It's out of my, I'm a victim. It's out of my hands. I can't do it. It seals the fate. But when it's won't, then why won't you? All you got to do is make a different choice. It's just basic terminology, but I find it's very empowering for them to be able to say it a different way. And I've often told clients that we have 3 lives, the one I'm leading, the one I want you to think I'm leading, and somewhere the one I wish I was leading. And I said, if you work through recovery, you have the ability to make all those 3 lives the same one, which is the one that I'm living is the one that I'm showing. And if it's not exactly the one I want yet, I'm on the path to get there. And but like I said, whatever choice you make, it has to be a supported choice, or you know, you can make 100 of them. You don't support them, nothing's going to come out of it. But I think terminology is really important as to how they speak to themselves. I've had clients that say, well, this always happens, this always happens. So no. Up until now, this is what has happened, right? Let's put a break in that, because always takes you off into the future and nothing's ever going to change. So up until now, this has happened. Okay, that's true. I'll give you that. Make different choices, have different outcomes. Thanks.
Michael, I totally agree with you in that. And I think it's really important to pay attention to our client's language. And you can tell pretty quickly whether somebody's coming across as a victim, you know, that life is always against them. And so you can, even at the start of a phone call with them, if they start doing that and saying, but it's interesting that you decided to call me. And I'm excited about that. You just made a really good choice for yourself. So right from the moment that I have contact with a client, I want to hear what language they're using so that I can start looking for the exceptions in what they're saying when they're on the phone with me.
Yeah, and if I could interject also, recovery is a process of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And I believe it's important that they align themselves with people who will focus on the 1 step forward that process equals, rather than left to their own devices and will fall back to the negative 1 step back, right? Because their mind is, okay, I'm failing. No. You have progressed 1 step. You know, do the process again. It takes you 10 steps to go 5 steps. Well, that's 5 steps further than you were before. Don't focus on the 5 steps back that happened in the process, because that's just part of moving forward.
Yeah. And as I said earlier, you know, even though a person may relapse several times, if they learn from that, if they discover something about themselves, then that's something you can use as a counselor to move them forward.
That's excellent. Thank you for your input. The next person is Jennifer. Jennifer, would you like to ask your question now? 1 second, you're just on mute. There we go.
Oh, thanks. Where I work, we talk a lot about choice making and how you even have to get to that point. So we also talk a lot about stages of change, but the biggest thing I think is their awareness. We do the awareness plus action equals change, and awareness minus action equals chaos. We talk about that a lot. We can be aware of a situation for a long time without having done anything about it. And it's not until we get up, make that choice to get up and do something about it, that change is even possible. I praise my clients all the time for coming because it's terrifying. Their whole life is going to change and they have no idea how. And yet they come, and I tell them, as soon as you opened that door and you came in and you made the decision to stay, you became a choice maker. Your addiction isn't in charge anymore.
Excellent.
Right?
Yes.
You have a choice now whether you stay or go. And with relapse, that process, you have a choice along those stages about whether you're going to take a step, you're going to take it serious and take a step to correct that, or if you're going to go all the way again. And if they do, I always just say, welcome back. Glad you lived.
Yeah, yeah, very true. Thank you.
All right, now we're going to head into some questions.
Can I talk?
Chat.
I don't have a hand.
Oh, okay. All right, we'll let you go and then we'll talk about the ones in the chat.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah, you know, to address the initial question, you know, like when you have clients that say they don't want to do a court-ordered thing, I just say, what does it take to say yes rather than no? You know, and is it a result of, are you hearing criticism? or are you hearing suggestion? And it's helping them say, maybe it's a suggestion for you to make that change that they see as necessary that's interfering with what you're doing. And in sessions as a counselor, I give presentations, I show people things, and I never tell them I'm doing this to be critical of you. I'm showing them to see if there's something in this information that will have you change. And that brings me back that I really appreciate the exception and miracle question, because that's what I'm going to bring up. I have never brought that up to them. And I think that's an important thing in having them evaluate before presenting things to them. And when you can present supportive stuff that will help them move forward and they can buy into it, I think they're going to act on their choices and they're going to do what they have to do. So thank you, Jurgen. I really appreciate what you've said.
Thank you, Dennis. I just want to make a comment on what you've said, because I think it's important to also recognize that sometimes our clients have lived pretty awful lives and they don't see that there can be a quality world, like a healthy quality world. And I think it's part of our job to say, you know, things can be different. And it sometimes takes clients a long time to feel confident about themselves. And this is where I also use what I call behavioral experiments. And I don't call it homework in my counseling, because I said, if you tried this, if you tried acting differently with this person, what do you think the result would be? And so I get them to experiment and see what it's like. And soon they discover that they have abilities and sometimes skills in dealing with people that they never thought they had. And I'm always amazed at that. And they'll come back and say, well, that was certainly different. That was not the reaction I expected out of that person. And then I can say to them, hey, you had a success here. See how you can change your own life? You know, you've made a choice to try that and it worked. And I don't know, I find that really satisfying, you know, when clients come back like that, so.
Yeah, I've had that experience too, Jurgen, in the sense that providing that awareness, that's really a good work. And when you see how that's benefited them, you really feel good that you put them on a right process of change. So thank you again.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Let's move on to some of the chat questions then. So our first chat question was from Tammy, and she said, what relapse prevention tools do others use with clients?
What relapse prevention tools? I think there's a number of
prevention tools.
Yeah, okay. I think one of the things, one of the most critical one is lifestyle. In other words, are people eating healthy? Are they sleeping well? Are they medically well? You know, when was the last time they had some blood work done? I like to know about sort of my client's world from a sort of a wholesome perspective. What do they do every day? Now, if they're in a treatment program, they're going to have a schedule, and which is great. And I think schedules are one of the critical things in relapse prevention, that people have some expectations and they know what to do. Now, this gets harder after a recovery program, because all of a sudden they find themselves back out in the world, and then they have to go, well, what do I do now? And this is where, for me, within a program, it's really important to talk about, what are you going to do after you leave here? You know, are you going to go to the gym? Or if you can't afford a gym, are you going to go for hikes? Where are you going to get your good meals from? You know, are you going to eat enough protein? Are you, you know, be socially engaged with people? So those, I call them lifestyle tools because I think they do help in relapse, because when people have a direction to go in their lives and they feel healthy about themselves, they are less likely to relapse. We could talk about tools all day, but
that's wonderful. Thank you for that. The next question was from Francis, and the question was, if your client continues to relapse under your counseling and you have explored every avenue, at what point should you refer a client to another counselor? And the second part of that is continuing the counseling knowing the client is lying about their using, enabling their substance misuse? Should I break that down? Do you want one at a time?
Sure, let's do one at a time.
Okay, so the first part of their question was, if your client continues to relapse under your counseling and you've explored every avenue, which point should you refer them to another counselor?
Well, I think if they continue to relapse, maybe there's something that's not working. I'm also open to the idea that sometimes we're not the right clinician for the client, and we need to refer on to somebody else. But often I find people who keep relapsing is that they don't want to change. And I know that sounds a little bit harsh, but there are some people who like that lifestyle and they continue to do it. And there's nothing I can do I can do to change it. You know, I kind of liken it to when I do couple counseling, and the couple has a certain way of engaging, when they fight or disagree, and I can work on them with their communication skills, and I can help them see things from a different perspective. But if that works for them and they don't want to change it, there's nothing I can do. And maybe I don't have a right to change that, because that's what they're choosing. And sometimes you just have to let it go and say, okay, if this works for the person, then I think my job's done.
That's a great answer. Yeah, so the second part now is continuing that counseling, like trying to get to that client, knowing that they're lying about using and enabling the substance misuse. Is it enabling the substance misuse? Sorry, I misspoke.
Well, yes, I sometimes think though too that clients develop a codependent relationship with a therapist, and that it's somehow feeding both sides. And I don't think that's healthy. And I think a clinician needs to say, if a person, they know that the person's lying about it, is to stop the counseling and say, you know what, you need to move on to another counselor, but this is not working anymore for you or myself. And we need to be honest about that, because you're choosing to continue to use, and that's not helping your progress at all. I'd be very open to other people's feedback on that, or if they have any experiences with that might be helpful.
Yeah, Francis, that question was from you. Do you want to chat? It's okay if you don't want to, but if you'd like to maybe, put your own spin or participate in that, you're absolutely welcome to.
Sure. Yes. Hi. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. I've been helping this particular client for 3 years. There has been improvement. His mother has always paid for his counseling. He's a younger person. And he has definitely improved, and he's not using, like before he was using crystal meth, and he went to treatment, and now he's drinking again and using marijuana. And the only reason why I know this, because I don't know this because he's told me, I know this because his mother checked his bank statements, which is a whole other thing. But anyhow, there's been all these financial repercussions coming up, basically. So he's been caught because of the financial piece, not because he's been honest about his using. So we've been meeting weekly, and he doesn't want to do Zoom. He doesn't want to go to meetings, but he'll speak weekly to me. And I'm basically the only person that he speaks to regarding his recovery or what's going on with his life or anything. I do think there's value in the sessions, but I also think he's not progressing, obviously, if he's using and we're talking every week and he's not talking about that, you know? So kind of, I feel like we're at a crossroads where I kind of feel like the right thing to do is to let him go, or for him to pay for the sessions himself to show that he actually wants to participate in them. And then, because obviously he has enough money to, you know, yeah.
Francis, I agree with you. You know, I think the more people are invested in their own counseling, the more likely there is to be change. You know, if somebody doesn't pay for counseling at all, like really, what's their investment, right? So, and he has enough money to buy the alcohol, and you know, so yeah, I think he needs to take up some responsibility there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was just a good opportunity to even just think about this. So just thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
I have a similar, excuse me, am I in here or not? We don't have hands.
You're all good. We can hear you.
I'm all good.
Yep.
I work for a family counseling and nonprofit organization, and none of our clients pay for counseling at all. And we have great success. And I run a relapse prevention program before the COVID with about 30 to 35 clients per week in a group setting. Very beneficial. We use many, many tools: cognitive behavior therapy, DBT therapy, biopsychotherapy. That sometimes we'll even get into the 12-step. But what I find very beneficial for the clients is that I do, and I'm the facilitator, and I have a co-facilitator because the group is so big, that we do a opening. How's your week going? What have you been doing? And I'd be surprised how many people have said, yes, I had a slip this week. I made a mistake. I lost my 3 months of sobriety. And then we'll talk one-on-one afterwards. But my question is, group therapy for relapse prevention, do you find that more beneficial for clients? I'm not talking to the doctor there, than individual one-on-one. Because when I meet my clients, they have clean time, sober time. They've gone to treatment centers, and then I do the aftercare.
Yeah, and I think aftercare is so important. And I think group settings are valuable, but I also think it depends on the person. Mm-hmm. You know, for some people, group settings are very scary, and for others, it's an opportunity to be with peers. Even though they may be socially economically different, they still have some of the same issues due to addiction. So, you know, I think both are useful. I think groups are really good.
I believe in that also. Group is the best way in which they would be able to piggyback off of each other and get something that will be profitable to themselves.
Yeah, and I agree, because often in a group setting, you can take the person can take that back to the counselor then and say, okay, this is something I've discovered, or this is something that happened in the group that threw me off, you know? So I saw a quick comment there that both are necessary, and I agree with that. I think they're very, they go hand in hand. It's not always possible for everybody though.
Perfect. Our last question in the chat here is from Bonnie. She said, should you look at the pros and cons to the choices presented and can't be set aside? Bonnie, if you'd like to jump in and have a verbal discussion about this, you're completely welcome to.
Thanks, Abigail. Yeah, because the client sounds more like he's focusing on the word can't instead of exploring what his options are. And, you know, we could steer them into that thinking process, going outside the box. I just think that he needs to explore more and what it would look like instead of just saying can't or won't.
Well, I mean, I would look at, you know, using those kinds of words, what they represent to the person. Why are you choosing to use the word can't?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I always try to frame things in a choice way so that they accept responsibility for what they are doing. You know, yeah, sometimes it's difficult when people just say, I can't, I can't, I can't. Really, in some ways, is I won't, and I don't want to do that.
Right. Because once they enter programs, just having dealt with youth justice kids in our program is, you know, they think they can play the fake it till they make it. And then when they see that there's work to be done when they enter the program. So it's really exploring the pros and cons.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with youth, you know, exploring pros and cons can be helpful, very helpful, in that they can then decide what's important to them and how they want to view things.
Any other questions? I may have missed some in the chat, but if anyone would like to
I just have one
raise their hand and chat with the speaker, or put some more in the chat that I. Okay, go ahead, Don, and then we'll go over to Michael afterwards.
I've worked with some clients that have relapsed over and over and over again. So sometimes I have to meet the client where they're at, what they want, what their needs are, not what I want. So sometimes you have to go into the harm reduction area. And the harm reduction areas is mostly, if you're using heroin, is let's get you on methadone. Are you open to that? Are you, because your life, then try to change your lifestyle. And some, I call it a fallen leaf, believe it or not, from the tree. When it falls, it just, I've done everything I can, or recommend them to the psychotherapist or somebody that's more qualified than I am, or another counselor, like you were saying. When it comes to that point where what you're doing, it's just not working.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're doing more harm to yourself and the client. And like, there are options, harm reduction, or somebody that's, there's some trauma in that person somewhere, especially youth, and they don't open up that much. And there is a lot of work to stay clean and sober, like the lady said. And he's switching from crystal meth to alcohol to pot, experimenting, and his mother's paying. It's a difficult situation to be in as a counselor.
It is. You're absolutely right.
So Mike Hannon would know more. I see him with his hand up. I'll let him talk.
Michael, off to you.
Thank you. Hi, Don. Good to see you, buddy. Yeah, just in regards to the concept of the can't won't that I talked about later or earlier, it's just, to me, when clients use the word can't, it's quite often a mechanism for them to absolve themselves of responsibility of the outcome, right? I can't do this, I can't do this. Whereas the word won't gives them the responsibility of the outcome. They most definitely still have to do a pros and cons and understand the ramifications of whatever choice is made. But when I'm expressing myself in the words that, well, I can't, then it absolves me of responsibility and means I don't have a choice. It's completely out of my power. Whereas the other puts the focus back more on the aspect of the only thing keeping this outcome from happening is the choice you're making. And so when you say you won't do it, ask yourself, why won't you do it? Like what is stopping you from making the constructive decision as opposed to continuing to play the victim who it's not my responsibility, life is just going to do this to me mindset. And if nothing, sometimes just in that conversation itself, it starts to challenge their perception of how they have sort of painted themselves into this corner of their own volition without even really realizing that's what they've been doing. And they start to realize, wait a minute, you know, maybe if I do make some different choices, something will happen differently, right? Because they never gave themselves that opportunity to believe that, because they trapped themselves in the prison of can't.
And Michael, one of the things that I sometimes do with clients is I congratulate them on their choices, in the sense that you have experienced the outcome of your choices. Congratulations, you did exactly what you chose to do, and you were successful. And, you know, and it may sound a bit nasty or mean, but it points to the fact that they've made this choice, and here's the outcome of that choice.
Yeah, and I think it's very, very important for clients to start to develop a vision for themselves living what a clean and sober life would look like. And because without that vision, they're going to get really uncomfortable when things are going good anyway, which is sometimes an even bigger trigger into relapse is success, because they get scared, it's nervous, it's fear because it's undiscovered country for them. And sometimes it's also fear of the fact that, well, if I can stay clean and sober, what other expectations are people going to have of me that I don't necessarily want to meet? And as long as I'm used to failing, I'm used to what failing has done. And so I'm just going to stay in my little comfort zone of failure, which I never use the word failure, I always use delayed success, is okay. Let's move past that. Let's move past that. Let's see what that would look like, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely agree, Michael. Success really scares some people. And because if they're used to failure and then all of a sudden they're successful, it scares them. And that's where we need to be supportive and say, yay, you did it. You know, we have to champion them at that point, I think. So thank you. I appreciate that.
All right,
Hi
Jim, you're up. What's your question?
Jurgen, I have a couple of comments and questions. One is, when I'm dealing with people and we're talking about choice, I like to take it and have them and redefine it as to what they control in that choice.
Good point.
And then work with that, because many of our clients, my clients, have come through this and they feel as though they have absolutely no control what's going on. And when I redefine what the choice is, the fact that, okay, if you're going to go to jail because you don't go to the group, what control do you have on that? You have actually control whether or not you go to jail. That becomes your choice. So so it's not about somebody's taking the choice away from me to put that, but you have the opportunity to maintain control. And most of my clients have said, all I want to do is have control of my life. So now we reframe it for them and they start to recognize that. I don't know if that makes sense to you or...
No, actually, Jim, that is really, really good, because I think control is something that they think they've lost all ability to have any control over anything. But it could be a simple thing like a client could say to me, well, I have no money for food, but do you have control to go over to the food bank and get some food? Exactly. Right? It could be as simple as that. And where they saw it in possibility, they have some control of whether they go to the food bank or not, right? So yeah, I really agree. Thank you. I just sort of forgot about the concept of control in that.
Well, the concept of control also allows us to build empowerment for them.
Yes.
And work with that. The other piece is when I'm working with somebody who has had an issue of relapse, I'm really not that concerned about the relapse as I am about asking them and exploring with them what the pattern of relapse was, to see whether it's consistent with their past use patterns. And if it isn't, I've actually gone out before and bought a little muffin, put a candle in it, lit it up, and celebrated the fact that you have really made a significant change in what your pattern of use is through this relapse. So let's start to explore and move forward, as opposed to looking at you've failed and lost everything you've had before. So that's one thing that I've used many times, and it's worked quite well around that. So I don't know if that makes sense to people or not, but it's about like that, again, redefining what the relapse is about. And then you can explore the different pieces, what was going on, what was the stress, and various things. Because, and I also live in in an Inuit community where the extreme intergenerational trauma, those types of things are huge and can affect an ability for somebody even to recognize power or control, and also choice. So it becomes a very difficult thing because we've had multiple generations of things happening to put that person in that place of trauma and multiple loss. Especially we in Nunavut have the highest rate of suicide in the country. So any community that we have has faced multiple loss, and every client I've dealt with also has faced multiple loss, as well as the students that I teach in the college. So those are types of things that come into it as well. And I like to get them to explore. You talked about chaotic lives and situations and about choice and that type of thing. But I also like to bring it back to identify what their feelings are about situations, whatever they would be, and how do they look to deal with those feelings. And that starts to affect what their thought process is and their behaviors are, as opposed to the typical thing would be to avoid it, whatever, and use or something like that. If we can start to explore a process where they work through the feeling, identify what those feelings are, where they came from, what they're about, then I think you were exploring some of that stuff as well. And then it changes the whole dynamic around cognitive stuff and those types of reality therapy and those types of things as well, in my opinion, anyway.
Well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate those comments.
Okay, thanks. Have a great day.
You too.
Excellent. So we have a couple more minutes. If anyone has a question they'd like to ask, if you could please raise your hand or type it in the chat, and we'll head it over to you then. Michael?
Yeah, I don't want to monopolize everything here, but one of the things that I found, I did aftercare for a number of years and taught it and had clients come in and admit to a relapse. And often they think that's the end of their choice because they relapsed. And I said, well, no, now you have another choice, right? You can look at the relapse and take it as a very self-defeating, degrading situation and fall into self-pity and continue in the relapse, or you can pick yourself up, dust yourself off, find out why did that happen, and use it as a very, very strong learning tool to move forward into the next phase of your recovery. But see, quite often they relapse, they think, okay, my choice is gone now because I've picked up again. Well, no. It's just change the dynamics of the choice that you have to make now. Choose to stay in the negativity or choose to learn from the experience and say, okay, here's what happened. I got hanging with my old crowd. I've learned that's not a place that I can go. I've learned that shutting down when I feel upset is not an option. I need to talk to someone. I need to bring this out. And so it can be a really strong learning lesson to see, okay, what caused it? And if it's a repeated pattern, then it's something they can address and put tools in place to, and supports in place to overcome it the next time they're beset by that particular situation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, our next question is from Jennifer. If you want to unmute yourself, feel free to ask your question.
Okay, so mine is more about, it's more comment and maybe getting some ideas about motivation, because the biggest thing that I have found with people who keep coming back to our facility, two things. One is relationships. And the second one is they can't forgive themselves. they choose not to think they're worth doing all of that work around self-forgiveness. They just innately believe at their core that they're not worth that, so can't get sober, can't get clean.
Okay. And I think forgiveness in that sense, that they can't forgive themselves, is about letting the addiction have power over them. Mm-hmm. And I like to point that out to them and say, okay, how long are you going to allow this addiction to have power over you, to ruin your life, to keep putting you down? Is that the kind of power you want to give away? You know, and sometimes that works with people, pointing that out. Wow, I'm doing that. I didn't realize. So I just think reframing what forgiveness looks like to them, and sometimes even asking them, what would forgiveness look like? Like if you were actually to forgive yourself, wonder what that would look like. You know, what would you be doing differently? How would you be interacting with people differently? What would change in your relationships? So that's
the other thing I found interesting lately from them is that a lot of them are starting to see that, and they're deciding to make their mistakes from the past the reason to stay sober now. They don't want to use it as an excuse anymore to go back. They want to use it as a tool to make sure it doesn't happen again. And it's only been in the last year that I have heard clients talking like that when they relapse.
Okay, so that they want to use their past using as an excuse for a current. Is that what you're saying, Jennifer?
Things that happened in the past, things they've done in the past, they like to hang on to them because it gives them a good excuse to go back out.
Okay.
Instead of forgiving themselves for it and letting it go. But more and more, they're starting to look at it more as a tool, which I find fabulous. I think it's great, but they want to change how that looks to them. It's no longer necessarily a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Their choice, right?
Yep.
Always tell them it's your choice.
Great discussions happening here. I'm just gonna hand the mic over to Anton, who has a question. You just
Hello,
have to
everybody.
unmute yourself. There we go.
I did, eh?
Yeah, we can hear you. Good, all good. Now you can ask.
I think this is a great topic, and it's one of great concern for me. Working in a treatment center for a number of years, and being there myself too. For me, you know what? Someone asked me once why I stay clean. I'm in long-term recovery, and when I thought about it, it was now many years later, is the life that I have now is much more attractive than the one I left. And I think in early recovery, the one that I'm leaving is more attractive than the one I'm facing, because the one I'm facing is full of, it's scared, and there's a lot of fear, and it's unknown. And the one I left is still more attractive because it's my default, and there's friends there, and there's a coping mechanism. There's my safety net is there, and there's the things I'm familiar to in my comfort zone, being the drugs and that environment. And I think when the individual comes to treatment, I think, you know, addiction is resistant to treatment and prone to relapse. And I think denial is one of the biggest symptoms of addiction. And even though they may come there sincere, denial is still prevalent, and they don't even know they're in denial. And for me, I think when I looked at my own story and I look at our clients, I think we're charged with the task of taking that hopelessness away from them, and starting to show them, giving them self-efficacy toward moving forward with their major life areas and their goals, and to showing them that there is a life that is more attractive than the one they're leaving, and it's attainable. But I also believe that you know, yeah, they have a choice, and there's no such thing as forced morality. And I believe that ultimate choice of their change will come when they're at a place that isn't pleasant anymore, when they're done. And that's up to them. I think they have to hit a place that's sufficient for them to move forward, you know. I don't know. It's a deep topic, right? It's a scary one, because they could die ultimately on their next relapse. So,
Anton, I think this is why we need to have these discussions about relapse, and from different points of views, because sometimes our collective ideas are helpful and help us move through situations that we come across, or difficult clients, or things that we're not familiar with.
I totally agree, Jurgen, because every client has to be looked at individually, and they come to the table with their own conundrums, and we have to have I guess a bunch of ammo to know which one, which tool I got will best suit that individual, or where they're at in that spectrum of relapse or recovery, right?
Exactly, Anton. And I'm just going to put a plug in here for supervision. I think supervision is really, really important for clinicians. I still go to supervision. And so, because there are clients that I may have difficulty with, or I need a new perspective on, and I think it's important that all of us have somebody to go to. And I mean, from a clinical standpoint, to ascertain what's going on and how we can be different. And sometimes it's issues that we have that we need to talk about and say, am I doing some transference here? Am I seeing this as it really should be seen? Or am I in over my head with this client, and do I need to refer on? So that's just my little plug for supervision.
All right, just before I go to Michael, there was one question in the chat. Robin asked, who or what does someone's anchor look like? Robin, if you'd like to chat with us about that live, that would be great. Otherwise, we can just go off of what question you asked.
Hi, yeah. So anchoring for me, it was more of a suggestion that when I'm dealing with a client who is relapsed, just finding tools sometimes is scattered for them. So anchoring is a way for them to kind of just look at what is their support and who do they have around them. And that question of safety is my bias. What my safety support may not be their safety support, because they are still hanging with their old friends, or they might be in a state of transition where maybe they're not in their home, they're sleeping on someone's sofa or moving from place to place, so that's not stable. And the relapsing is happening because life is just chaotic in the moment. So finding something or someone that helps ground them, so that they can identify that anchor or that visual, that this is my grounding, this is my anchor, that I can just say stop, or I can pause for a little bit and really say, okay, now where do I go from here? Do I want to continue staying where I am and continuing in this relapsing where I know, it's going to hurt me, but I'm doing it anyway because it's right now my safety and it's my go-to place. It's familiar to me. Or do I risk, what am I risking to go forward to that unknown where, I might have something better with to help me.
And sometimes we need to help them with using that metaphor of an anchor, Robin, and saying, when is it time to pull that anchor up and move forward, you know, and see where you can go with it. You know, where are your sails going to take you, you know?
Exactly. So that's where I was going with that.
Okay, nice, thank you.
Perfect, thanks. So our last and final question is going to be back to Michael. Yeah, you have the floor.
Yeah. So to Jennifer, to your talking about the guilt and shame and the ability to get beyond it, I find for me, it's reframing the perception of guilt and shame that starts the process of forgiveness. And I often tell clients, you didn't do what you did because of who you are, you did it because of what you have, which is an addiction. The measure of who you are is that you feel so bad about what you did, you have to self-medicate the feelings. And I had one particular client who was a chronic relapser, and one of the things is we're sitting and talking. I said to him, you're taking responsibility for having lost your family, having lost this, having lost that, having lost this. And he said, yeah. I said, it's not your responsibility. Those things were taken from you by your addiction. Your responsibility was you kept opening the door and letting the addiction into your house. I said, so that's what your point is. Keep the door closed, keep the addiction on the other side of the door. The problem is it's standing out in the hallway, it's going to start saying, well, I'm going to let everybody know about all of this stuff, and it's going to trigger your guilt and shame. And you don't think you have the right to keep the door closed. I said, you do have the right to keep the door closed, but what you have to do is you have to fill your side of the room with people who are telling you, keep the door closed, and stop listening to the idiot on the outside of the door who's trying to talk his way in because he's just going to steal everything once he gets inside. I said, so your responsibility is keep the door closed, support that choice to keep the door closed.
Nice. Yeah, very true. I like that. Thank you for that, Michael.
Amazing. So maybe I spoke too soon. Maybe we have a question. Maybe we have time for one more question. It's been a long day, as I'm sure all of you feel. Yeah, one more question, if anyone has one, or otherwise we can wrap up. Then you can head to your next session a little bit early.
I just have one more question. Mike Hanna and I go back a long ways. That's why I believe his philosophy on that. I think when you're clean and sober, you do have a choice. When you're back into the addictive state and you're using every day, your choice is gone again until you make that conscious decision to change back into recovery. And it's as simple as that sometimes. We do have a choice when we're clean and sober to relapse. And when the client does relapse, I always say to them, what happened? And you know something? They know exactly what they did wrong. Most of them.
Yeah.
Exactly. Stop going to meetings, stop talking to the sponsor, started to hold on to resentments. They know exactly. And then we say, okay, you've had 365 clean days, two bad using days. Let's start fresh again and work on those things. Thanks for listening.
Abigail, can I make a comment after Dawn?
Sure.
I think when
yeah,
I'm
Dawn,
here,
are you finished?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Rhonda.
Okay, great. I really appreciated the little bit of conversation that Jennifer and Jurgen had together, as well as everything everybody else is talking about. I think what I'm hearing, which I've thought about lots as a clinician, is the relationship we have with ourselves. So when we speak about relapse prevention, we have to talk to our clients about the kind and the quality of relationship they have with themselves. As many of us know, they agonize over relationships with other people, and they often forget about themselves in this whole process. So how do I help, this is rhetorical, but how do I help my client think about self as the most important relationship? And it's something I often say to clients.
No, I think that's a really good point, Rhonda. It's a substantial point from the viewpoint that, you know, they also have to love themselves, right? And getting to that point, they haven't, their actions so far haven't shown that they're loving themselves, right? And they may not even know what that looks like. And we need to help them work that through and say, hey, you are a person of value. You know, you were created as a human being and you have value, you know. So thank you for that comment. I appreciate that.
Thank you all so much for coming today and coming to this session. And I'd love to thank our speaker. You did such a wonderful job, and thank you so much for coming to our conference. We're all doing our little claps in the background.
Well, thank you.
But yeah, I'm just gonna excuse you guys and you can go to your next session. It was wonderful having you, and it was great having a conversation with all of you this session.
All right, thank you very much. And I hope we keep this discussion alive in the future.